Hey everyone, so in a previous video I mentioned that my next game is going to be a turn-based RPG. I have a separate video showing how I made the multi-enemy combat system, so now I've turned my attention to the environment. I am not a 3D modeler, so I've purchased some assets from the Unity store, and I'll probably augment that with a few more assets depending on how sprawling of an environment I'm going to make. It's going to be relatively small since I'm the only one working on this, and I want to make sure that I keep this to a doable distance. So it's probably going to be like a tech campus, kind of like you'd see on the West Coast of the United States, some of these large tech companies. So it'll have like a residential area, an office area, a data center area. Then there'll be like a cafeteria, common area, but then you have like the laboratories. So this kind of sprawling tech campus. So both you have some variance as well as keeping it within a doable distance. Anyways, I've actually found the process rather cathartic when you're not trying to stress over the making of the individual objects and you're just assembling the environment. I guess it's probably a little bit like playing The Sims, which is kind of interesting because I've always said that game development is not at all like game playing, and yet some gameplay does indeed have design elements, such as The Sims, where you're buying objects, whether it's a table or a painting or whatever, and then you're assembling it and you're putting together the environment. So in some ways, games like The Sims have taken game design elements and put it as a gameplay element. But anyways, that's just kind of an observation that I made, and that the overall process can be rather cathartic and actually kind of soothing to make an environment. Anyways, so I want to talk about some of the storytelling and some of the puzzles you can come up when you're making an environment. So, like for instance, say it's a mystery, okay? A character has disappeared. Well, without overtly telling the player, you can give information by like object orientation. So maybe the computer is on, but the chair is like facing the windows in the back of the room. So it suggests that they were using the computer and then they heard something and they went out to the window, and maybe that's when something happened. And so the player would go out to say the alley and there's a clue there. Okay. So that I think is really great storytelling without overtly telling the player, like they click on the chair and have a pop-up say the chair is facing the windows, maybe something happened there. It's much more subtle. It's about having and relying on the user's observation skills. But to be fair to the person playing the game, you have to be consistent. If you don't do that consistently, then people are going to be just chasing shadows. So if you can do that kind of really tightly controlled environment, I think you can do some interesting puzzles like that where you communicate information to the game player without overtly telling them. Now, if you expand that a little bit more on the idea of environmental puzzles, okay, so whereas rather than just having a discrete puzzle in a room, discrete meaning that it's by itself, where, okay, I have to type in a code, or I have to move some chess pieces, or I flip some levers, instead you have like this multi-room puzzle, okay? So say it's an apartment complex, a multi-floor, and you have this room you have to get into. You try the door and the door is locked or barricaded. Now, a game like Silent Hill, in the map, whenever you tried a door, one of three things would happen. It would either show you that you've walked through the door previously, it would show you that the door is locked, or it would do like a red squiggle indicating that it's never going to open. In other words, even though it's a door, it's effectively a wall and that you can't go through it. So you're trying to get into this apartment, but you can't get into this door. It's barricaded. So what do? You go into the apartment next to it, and then out the back window, there's a fire escape. So you go out the window, up the fire escape, in the window, and now you're above the room that you started in. Now maybe this floor, the rooms are combined, so you can walk over. You're now above the area that you want to go to. You go out the window, down the fire escape, and now you can get into the window that you want. On a side note, this is meant to be a data center, so clearly you would not want windows and fire escapes outside of your data center, but I'm just using an example. So in that case, you have created this very subtle environmental puzzle that you haven't, it's not just like, okay, flip these switches to make a door open. It's about how these different areas interact with each other. It's not just about point A and point C, it's about point B in between as well, that kind of traversal. And I think that when done well, that is very interesting because so many times I think developers just lean into making a big area and they think that that replaces clever design, and it, in my opinion, it does not. That it's not just running through a bunch of rooms, it's about how they interact with each other in a meaningful way. And in that case, there's a logic to the layout, the idea of the fire escapes, the idea of the windows. I'm not saying that that is a groundbreaking example. I'm just giving an example about how you can do more than just plain vanilla add a room, add a room, add a room. It's about how these rooms relate to each other. And that's how, in my opinion, you can make really clever design. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm really not fond of roguelikes. I believe that it lacks that kind of overall design philosophy. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some incredibly talented people working on roguelikes, and there's very talented people who do like speed runs and they really enjoy it. And I'm not knocking any of that. I'm just saying that it's a different philosophy. That with a rather than this kind of randomly or procedurally generated area, you have this overall really well thought out environment. Of course, you can go too heavy with the traversal, like I think it was Lost Legacy. It was a standalone expansion for, I believe, Uncharted 4. And there was one point where they were just really fluffing up the runtime because it was something like some kind of structure, like a bell or something. Your character jumps onto the bell, and so the shimmying around the perimeter of it, and then when they get around, then they can jump up a little bit higher, shimmy back, jump up higher, and you had to do it like 5 times. And at that point, I believe you're just wasting the player's time at that point. That it's not fun, it's not clever. Again, in my opinion, it's not like you're really making any progress. It almost feels silly that you just keep going back around this bell object. So, anyways, just like anything else, you have to balance it. You have to make it feel like it's earned and it's meaningful, and that you're not just wasting the player's time. Another example: say you're playing a dungeon and it's top down, so you can actually see what's around you. Okay. So you reach a dead end, but on the other side of the dead end, you see the item that you're looking for. So a little bit like we were just saying about the barricaded door, you see a treasure chest or an NPC or an item or a goal, and basically the layout of the environment is specifically trolling you because so close and yet so far. You're never going to get through this wall. You are in utterly the wrong place, and yet you are so close to your goal. So I think that can be fun too to do that. Again, in moderation. So I think that's about all I really wanted to say in this is so yeah, the joys of level design that I find it can be kind of interesting and fun when you're not focused on trying to make the individual items and that you're just putting it all together, and the kind of storytelling you can do with the way something is created, and that you have this kind of storytelling arising from the way the situation is set up, the way the environment is set up. So I don't have any kind of release date for this. It is still very early. Even thrown in a few puzzles and passwords and key finding, it wouldn't take long to obviously go through this small area. So there's quite a bit to do. I'm probably going to make this be multi-leveled, and that like over here, even though I have this room set up to be a data center, it's not going to be there. I'm just kind of putting ideas out there, and then what I'll do is I'll turn this room into a prefab of its own. Then I can remove it from the scene and just drag and drop it somewhere else. So I'll probably do like multiple levels. So like I'll have like 3 levels of residential areas, and then maybe like I said, a couple common rooms, and then you actually have like the laboratories and other things like that. Maybe there'd actually be a courtyard in the back. So we'll see. So I've got quite a bit of work to do. So far, I believe this is the only indoors environmental set I bought. It's the Sci-Fi Interiors pack by Mesh Tint Studios. I did a review and implementation video of this a few days ago if you wish to check that out. So we'll see if this is sufficient. I'm already seeing a few gaps, so I'll probably have to buy one or two other packs that have like a similar visual style. These aren't really blocky, even though it's called Cube. I would say this is somewhere between low poly and just a regular um, style that you would expect. So I definitely don't consider it to be blocky. Like some of the other things that Mesh Tint does. And that's not meant to be a criticism. Some people really like that style of artwork. So anyways, so that's the status of the game. That's my thoughts on level design. So if you have any comments, feel free to put them in the comments. And I think that's about it. So I hope you found this interesting and useful. And please do enjoy the rest of your day.